Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle. I am Aaron Smith, joined as always by my co host, George Vogel. We are brought to you by Remington Tavern. Get down to Remington Tavern at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTav Cincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y, and follow them on Facebook. And with that, George, it's been a week since we last spoke. How you been?
I've been good. Got to play a lot of golf yesterday. Had a fun weekend. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
Good.
Had some errands to run around today. We got a little one going in for some surgery next week.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Getting adenoids and the
Oh,
tonsils and tubes at the age of 9. So we'll be doing a lot of R&R with him. But
you'll be buying some bicycles,
popsicles, ice cream, all the things that kids love.
and you'll dive into some of that too, I'm sure.
I'm sure I will.
Yeah, I got a pleasant surprise Saturday. We were down at a hotel across the river from Cincinnati with a nice view, and walk in, and it was weird because the app's saying there's one room left and it's a smoking room. Well, I don't think anyone has smoking rooms anymore. And well, they're like, no, we don't have smoking rooms. We don't know what's going on. So we take the room anyway, get over there because we wanted the grandkids to have somewhere to swim indoors and all that. I'll be damned if we didn't get hooked up with the presidential suite. So
there you go.
Yeah, but I can see the Reds game going on across the river, right? I can see into the part of the stadium and see the scoreboard and all. But the in-house cable didn't have Valley Sports, so I had to watch it on my iPad. You know, it was like being back in the Stone Ages. But anyway, it was a fun weekend. We had fun, and that might be my first time I've stayed in the presidential suite.
Maybe it had something to do with your name. Maybe they were familiar with who.
No. I got no juice like that. Nothing like that. I think they were out of rooms. We just got lucky.
Well, take it for what it is, and I hope you enjoyed your time.
Oh yeah, it was fun. You like chasing two little kids around.
That said, we do have a show to do for you here tonight, and there's been some Reds games in between. The last time we spoke, they were getting throttled in a 9-4 loss to Philly, and since then they took one from the Phillies 4-1, dropped one to the Mets 3-2 on Friday. High scoring one 9-6 on Saturday. The Reds come out victorious, then lose the rubber match to the Mets 3-1 before another high scoring one last night 10-8. And right now they're down 9-3 in the bottom of the 8th.
So the last two times on a show, they've allowed 9 runs.
That's not a good trend.
No, we got to change that. It's too late tonight, but we got to change that.
They've got to change that. That's not on us.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. They've got to change it. And I'll tell you what, it might be on us, though. Tonight, you are not going to – this is the absolute God-honest truth. So, buddy of mine was looking at the Cy Young odds, right? So, over the weekend, he texts me, and he's like, hey, I put $40 on Frankie Montas to win the Cy Young. Probably not going to happen. But it was like plus $150,000 odds. So if you bet 100, so I'm like, okay. So tonight, he sails through the first inning, sailing through the second. I go into my app, put $10 on him to win the Cy Young, and then boom, he doesn't look like a Cy Young candidate as soon as I put that money down. So we'll see. I mean, I thought it was worth a shot. I thought, what the hell? You know, he's looked good the first couple times out. You never know. And it's not like a Reds player can't win a Cy Young because, it just happened with Trevor Bauer not all that long ago. So I'll give it a shot. So we'll see if Frankie can get it back together after tonight's start. I hope like hell he does because they're going to need him. But yeah, maybe it is not necessarily your fault, but it could be mine because, man, if you want to see something go south, put money on it. I put some more money on the Reds to do stuff too, but hopefully it's not a jinx. But based on my history, could be.
Well, last Tuesday we had talked about the injury bug starting to bite this team,
Yeah.
and we saw more of the same in the last week as D'Antoni pitched his ligament right off his elbow again. Feel terrible for that guy battling to get back on the field. Finally does, and it took what one real pitch, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it was in that outing. Yeah.
Just one actual pitch after warmups and all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's such a shame. I can't say I'm shocked. I don't think anybody is because of that history and coming back from that. But he's not the only one this is happening to. And, it's you feel really bad for him. And I heard a great story tonight on the game about, Suter going back between innings. He was actually pitching and he comes in to take over and
yeah,
gets all those warm-up pitches from scratch to, and at the end of the inning, he goes back to the training room to check on TJ and give him a hug and hope for the best outcome. And class move there. But boy, what a blow to Antone. Like I said, I'm not shocked. It's terrible when this thing happens to those guys, but he's got that history. And he's going to try it again. He's going to have surgery Friday and try to come back next season and give it another go. And, he talked about his memories of whenever his big year was, 2021, maybe. I can't remember when he really had it going there. And he's just would do anything to get back to that point. And that's what it's going to take. I mean, he's going to put himself through another rehab and after a surgery and try to give it a go. And I wish him the best. But boy, that's a tough break there.
And you talked a little bit about the fact that he's not the only one that this happened to. There's been some talks around just talking heads or people who get paid to write interesting things about sports. As they've been talking about, is this the fault of the pitch clock? Is this the fault of getting rid of the sticky stuff? As
Right.
Guys seem to be. What do you know about when you take a muscle that has been working correctly and something happens to that muscle, other muscles compensate or overcompensate to make up for what that muscle was doing. And I feel like when you take away an aid as the sticky stuff, or even the break in between, allowing yourself that extra little bit of rest for those couple of seconds that you used to have while guys would play with their batting gloves or whatever else they did in the batter's box. But now you have guys who are hurrying up in these. While it's more entertaining for the fan because there aren't as many delays, I don't know if necessarily the MLBPA would agree with what's good for the fan is good for the pitcher.
Right. And they've made some statements about it, and pitch clock was front and center of that statement. Baseball is countering by saying there's really no true evidence that that's the case because they've looked at the history of pitchers who work fast versus pitchers who don't. They don't quite see a correlation there. I spent a lot of time when I worked at my job doing stories about different sports injuries with Dr. Krimchek, the Reds team doctor. And he's been big. And another issue they're looking into, you got pitch clock, the sticky substance, and I'll get into that in a minute and what that does. Maximum effort pitching, everyone's looking for the highest amount of velocity you can get. And that starts at an early age. And youth baseball and looking for max effort there. And a lot of these arms are getting strained if not torn up in youth baseball as they try to do this. And a lot of it has to do, we've heard a lot about spin rate over the last several years.
Yep.
And people seek that. Pitchers seek that. Pitching coaches seek it. You're looking for maximum spin rate in addition to max effort. And that puts a lot of strain on that ligament in the elbow. And I think that they really have to get to the bottom of this. They got to figure out what it is, whatever it is. And if it is the pitch clock, you got to come up with something. I love the pitch clock and how it's got the game moving. And, you really can't afford to run to the fridge for a beer between pitches now because you're going to miss something. But if it's getting these guys injured, and I'm not there yet with the pitch clock, I'm actually leaning more towards the youth baseball aspect and all the strain put on young arms there where you're not an adult yet, you're not fully developed, all that. But also, I think a lot of guys that have gotten hurt are going back to this sticky substance they were allowed, this rosin they were allowed to use. And, some of the guys may have been overdoing it, but it helped them grip the ball. They got to do something where these guys, because they feel like they've got to grip the ball a lot tighter without that rosin to get the same spin rate they were getting before. And they're seeking that. It's like, I had this kind of spin rate, in 2021 or early. I think it was during that season is when they made this change. And guys felt like they had to grip the ball harder, and that's putting more strain on that ligament in the elbow to grip and try to get that spin while still throwing very, very hard. And that makes sense to me when the way they explain it like that, and you don't have to grip as hard to get that same result with the sticky substance. They may want to look into helping these pitchers out with that stuff. I know, back in the old days with the spitballs and the Vaseline and all that, you don't want to get back to all that, but there's got to be a way to help these pitchers avoid these major injuries like this. And I they've got a task force they're forming to look into this. There's a lot of doctors out there that have years and years, including Kremchek, have been doing this 30 plus years. Dr. Andrews down in Birmingham, Elatash out in Los Angeles. There's a lot of guys who are deep into this medically. And I hope they get together and figure out what it is that's causing these injuries, because it's hurting baseball. It's hurting, the viewer interest, the fan interest when you got guys like Spencer Strider going down. That's not a good thing for the game of baseball, or Ohtani, who's not pitching now because of what happened last year.
Yeah, it's kind of been a mess in regards to all this pitching. I know that there's been talks of some of the inverted W formation that pitchers have been doing and kind of getting away from that. As the guy that the Reds used to have hired, I believe his name was Kyle Bodie. When he was here, he kind of revamped the whole system, and the Reds and Kyle Bodie did part ways. I believe it was last season. But it makes me wonder, because there's some people saying that his style might have led to some of these injuries. And I hope that's not the case. He was linked with Mark Pryor all the way back then. When, if you remember, Cubs pitcher Mark Pryor, who was supposed to be the next big thing once upon a time, and that did not work out for that guy, unfortunately. And I just hope that TJ Antone isn't a victim of a guy trying to help out pitching. I don't think it's anything Kyle Bodie's doing on purpose or anything like that. No. It's just unfortunate if that is the case, that while it's helping out in one way, it's certainly potentially causing injuries somewhere else. So,
and these are some bright guys that are looking at this stuff, and I don't know if they'll ever be able to nail it down completely, and who knows, it's probably some combination of what we're talking about here. But I have full confidence these guys are going to be able to come up with some recommendations that are going to help protect these guys. But I'm telling you, for me, that search for increased spin rate and gripping that ball like that really clicks with me. That could definitely be a big contributor to what we're seeing all across baseball with these pitchers, and I just hope they get to the bottom of it. But you're never going to completely nail it down because it's
Right.
so inexact. Like when you're talking about these guys when they're 14, 15, and 16, and throwing these balls. I mean, are you ever going to be able to completely have everybody not trying to throw sliders when they're 15 years old? No. That
we got
for it.
We got a 13-year-old trying to throw sliders, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
It just and look, we did it too when we were kids, and you don't think anything about something's going to hurt your elbow or whatever. And quite honestly, I never really made it much as a pitcher. I was a catcher who threw some sliders to second base, not on purpose. They just moved like that. That's why I washed out early in this game, I guess. But I don't know that they'll ever be able to pin it down to one thing, but there's probably going to be some recommendations out of these guys that are going to help in the long term. And you're never going to completely get rid of these arm injuries and these elbow injuries. And everybody's built somewhat differently. And there are guys like, back in the day, Nolan Ryan, who could throw 100 miles an hour for 20-something years, or Roger Clemens, who was accused of doing a lot of stuff to help that along. But those guys were workhorses and threw hard. It wasn't like they were Wilbur Wood throwing knuckleballs. These guys were firing. So it's inexact, and they're not going to come up with anything that's going to be, get rid of all of this. But they've got to help these guys out there. I feel like they're dropping like flies, to be honest with you. It just seems like, look at the Reds and the injuries their pitchers have had over the last several years, and TJ heads the list. And great guy, and my God, when he was on and he had it working and he was healthy, he was so nasty and so fun to watch pitch. And I'm watching last night's game, and I believe it was last night when Fernando Cruz came in and he had that splitter working. And, Barry Larkin did talk about some of the strain that puts on that elbow joint. But, man, he had it working, and that splitter was unbelievable last night. And it's so fun to watch these guys when they have that stuff working. Not fun for the batters who are sitting there like, what the hell's this? I mean, he had a couple of them just drop off the table.
The batters had plenty of fun last night. It was a 10-8 game. Come on, George.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree, but the guys, the one that Cruz struck out on that splitter, that dude wasn't having fun at that point. But yes, to your point about the plenty of runs, it was a fun game to watch, and I really did enjoy seeing Cruz do that. And it's fun to watch any of those pitchers do that. Just got to keep them healthy, and it's got to be something a little safer than what we've seen over the last few years.
Well, the Reds were able to avoid 2 injuries, one to Jaime Candelario, as that didn't seem to be much of anything. He did have to leave a game and then was able to play the next day. And also with Jonathan India, as he was struck with a foul ball during batting practice in the leg, but that was yesterday, and he was able to play today. So some good
after he took a pitch off his hand.
Yeah, he did. I watched that game, and hit him right the bottom of the hand, right?
Yeah, that had to hurt. Like, what? I guess that's kind of why he didn't play last night, was more the hand. But how do you take that shot off the shin like that, and you're playing a day later?
I don't think there's anybody on the team who's been hit more than Jonathan India.
No, that guy has just been a punching bag. I mean, he gets hit by more pitches and things happening. That freak thing. I don't know how that. I saw the replay of it, and it's crazy that he's standing right there with a chance to get hit. I don't know what, they're so used to being around balls flying everywhere, but it's just, that they don't think anything of it. And it's like, stand where the foul ball can't hit you point blank, maybe.
Yeah.
But he's tough as nails. I mean, the fact that he's back in the lineup and playing tonight, and, I've said it before, thank goodness they've got him around, given how everything else is going on with the injuries. But, man, that's one tough dude right there.
Ellie, in the last week, has been he's had some issues with errors. He's been electric with the bat, but he has had some issues with errors.
He's got to clean that up, and it seems like it's mostly the throwing errors, right? But he's had issues, and he's got to clean that up. You can't have a shortstop, and when I went back and looked at his defense last year, which was a much bigger window, and it was not anything like we've seen at the beginning of this year. But if he's going to keep playing shortstop, he's got to clean that up. And he certainly has the ability to. I don't put anything past that dude, but yeah, that's a problem. The defense in general has been a problem. I mean, it's not, and I didn't think it was going to be great, but I think their lineup, when everybody's healthy, is constructed in a way that the good outweighs the bad when you look at the offensive potential. I think, as good as the guys have done in the outfield for the most part, you still miss Friedel patrolling center field. I mean, there's a ball that fell in between, I think it was last Sunday or Saturday a week ago when Fairchild had that game that was a little shaky in the outfield. TJ Friedel doesn't have any shaky games in the outfield. And so you miss him a little bit. I don't completely buy the whole familiarity argument that a guy's going back on the ball. I mean, you just got to communicate. You just got to call for the ball, and whoever calls for the ball, you got to get the hell out of his way. But, yeah, they've got to clean that up, and Ellie in particular has to clean that up, or this season is not going the way that I predicted.
On the flip side of the coin, though, Ellie, like I said, has been electric with the bat. He recently had how far back did that hitting streak go that was broken? It went into last season.
Yeah, it was 15 or so games, and it was more. I think it was an on-base streak. But it went back in the last season, and he was up to 15 or something like that.
And then last night he has the home run from one side of the plate, the in the park home run from the other side of the plate. I think had 3 stolen bases in that same game. Just incredible what he's able to do when he's on the base path.
Yeah, and thank God he did all that last night because he needed every last bit of it, as it turned out. When you're sitting there looking 8-0, it's like, this is over. And something, he came to life, and that game helped make his whole offensive numbers as a set look a lot better now than what it looked over the weekend. He was in the low 200s with a batting average, and I'd like to still see him cut down on those strikeouts, but every player is going to have some area that's a bit of a struggle, and that's his Achilles heel when it comes to being at the plate. But he's electric, man. He can do anything out there on the bases, at the plate. Just please make the throws a little better from that shortstop position, so that doesn't become a recurring problem. Then you look at Spencer Steer, Player of the Week. My God.
Just getting to that.
Yeah. What about the start to the season he's had?
9 for 22, 3 home runs, 9 RBI, 1.455 OPS. I believe that it also included, I think it was also including the steal of home. Because that doesn't often happen.
Nope.
But he was able to get that as somebody was simultaneously, it's part of a double steal.
Right.
To second, but regardless, still stole home. But not bad for the Reds to already have a Player of the Week.
Yeah, no, that is great to see, and his numbers on the season are good, and leading the team in RBI, and just a solid player. And they move him. He's in the outfield now, and seems like he had to move there to have a position based on the way everything, but he moves out there and it's not a problem. He's just a ball player. And I don't put anything past that guy. Like I say, he's not the flashiest guy out there, but he more than gets the job done. And, he had that grand slam last week in the 10th inning to put that game away. Just The dude just rises to the occasion every time he's asked to do so, it seems like.
On the broadcast tonight, they had said coming into the game he was 7 of 14 with runners in scoring position, and that's an outstanding statistic.
Yeah, it is. And there's something, it's always like you think like it's law average. And there are some players that are just clutch and just somehow focus in when there's a time that they can make a difference. And he strikes me as one of those guys. It was, you go back in my day and it was all the talk about Tony Perez in those situations. He's kind of got that same, like, just finds a way to get those runs across the plate or make a play that they need to stay in a game or win a game. And I love the guy. I just think he's a good all-around baseball player.
He's definitely got some moxie about him. That's for sure. The other couple names I wanted to bring up before we move off the Reds, just in regards to how they've been doing this season. I know last week we talked about Christian Encarnacion Strand and slumping already after several games. Apparently that's back in the conversation. He did have a hit tonight and a run scored before I had to come do this. But what are we doing a week and a half into the season and we're talking about dudes slumping?
Oh, I know.
10 games in.
I know it's not a big enough sample to panic at all. He's got to get going. He knows, and I what I saw last year, I'm confident he will. But yeah, he's got to get it going, and Candelario's got to get it going. Those two at the plate have struggled, and you always have guys that start off slow, but I don't think they're going to be on the interstate when it comes to batting average by the end of the month. I think they will get it going. Candelario has a lengthy enough track record that I'm confident that will happen. And CES just looks like too good of a hitter to allow that to happen. I think they'll be fine. It's just, look, you can take a 10 to 12 game segment at any point in the season and find a guy who's batting 1 something on a team or several guys that are batting 1 something. But yeah, they're off to a slow start and you don't like it, but it happens. But they got to get going, and Candelario's definitely got to get going. I mean, they've got a long wait before they get Marte back in the lineup. So this guy's got to help carry the load, and he's a veteran. He's a guy that they go out and sign in the offseason as a veteran to kind of keep everybody else going. You're not supposed to worry about him, and I'm not saying I'm worried about him, but he's got to get his butt in gear.
Yeah, correction on CES. He's now 2 of 4 with 2 runs scored tonight.
There we go.
Sounds like he's moving in the right direction, and looks like there are no outs. Runners on first and second in the bottom of the 9th. Reds down 9-5, and CES would be up after this batter. So,
well, hopefully this guy gets on, and then we get some bonus extra innings tonight. Not banking, but
we'll see what happens. Moving off of Reds baseball, just real quick, wanted to touch on Bearcats baseball. I know I didn't tell you this in the pre-show. I totally forgot I wanted to bring this up, but we did have Coach Bishel on before the season started, and the Bearcats currently sit at 19-13 overall, 7-5 in conference, 12-3 at home. I know they played Xavier tonight. I don't know how that went or if that's still going. That game started at 5.
Maybe that is tonight. I was thinking Thursday, but I could be wrong.
The old Joe,
since it would be
the old Joe Nuxall Classic.
Yeah, up at Prasco.
Yes.
I think it's where they were going to play.
Yes.
Yeah, first, I mean, 7-5 in the Big 12 for this team with
swept TCU.
Coming in, and swept TCU over the weekend, who was a nationally ranked team to start the season. That's impressive. That's very
run rule on Sunday, George.
Crazy. I mean but this coach, I don't know. I mean, his track record is winning, and he finds ways to win. He knows how to win, and and when we had him on, he's one of those guys that I felt struck me as a guy that's not going to make any excuse about a transition or worry building. He's not one of those guys. He's a guy that's like, here's what I got. I'm going to find a way to win with him. And that's what you want. And by golly, he is. I mean, I'm surprised by this, to be honest with you. I thought the Big 12, and look, it's fairly early still, but
Sure.
7-5, pretty, 12 games, decent sample. So that's 4 different series in the Big 12, and they're more than holding their own. So I got to give them props for that. I mean, that's quite honestly very surprising to me that they would have a winning record in conference play at any point, really.
They do have a measuring stick series coming up this weekend, as they are at Oklahoma State, who is the 21st ranked team in the country. So that'll be just another way to know if this team is something to legitimately keep an eye on as the season goes on. But a top 25 matchup nonetheless.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. It's at their place. As you said, very good team. But man, if you go in there and get one, you're okay. But if you can go win that series and get 2 of them, holy God, you're feeling pretty darn good about yourself.
Sure. So their next home game will be next Tuesday, as they host, they host EKU on Tuesday, the office night, apparently. And it looks like a homestand all week next week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
They try to make 1 or 2 of those.
There you go.
Not tickets. I would buy a season ticket. I got 2 of them.
Well, Thursday, as we talk about events going on at UC, Thursday of this week is New Heights. They will be, Travis and Jason Kelsey will be at Nippert Stadium. You're going to be heading to that one, George?
I'm going to be out of town, and I'm kind of bummed about that because something's going to happen there, I think.
Well,
I don't know what, but with those two, I don't put anything past them.
They just announced Orlando Brown would be the second special guest. They've already announced Joe Burrow. So it sounds like just a couple of Chiefs and Bengals cutting it up at this point.
That will be a
Eagles
fun,
and Chiefs.
Yeah, an Eagle and a Chief, a former Chief who's now a Bengal and a Bengal through and through. That'll be fun. It'll be, if you would have told me that at any point that a couple UC players would be sitting and talking and recording a podcast in Nippert Stadium and expect thousands of people at $100 a pop up to $1,000, I'd be, come on. That's not going to happen in any lifetime. And here it is with, 2 guys who, UC people are very proud of because of the grit they have. Jason coming in as a walk-on and then earning his way into he's going to be got a Super Bowl ring, going to be a Hall of Famer in the NFL. Travis coming in and switching positions and then doing what he's done. And they represented kind of the real blue-collar beginning of this. I don't even know if you call it a renaissance of UC football. I guess if you go back to way back when, in the 50s, they had some damn good football programs and some damn good teams. But certainly kind of a birth of this newfound success UC football has had, and they've had a lot to do with that. I mean, Jason certainly did. You can point to a lot of people. We had Rick Minner on at one point talking about the foundation he helped lay and what was going on. And it's those two are they just stand out when you talk about UC football and then what they've done, and always seem to be very respectful and appreciative and give the shout outs. I know people get mad at Travis because sometimes he says Cleveland Heights or whatever. instead of University of Cincinnati. But when he goes in a playoff game and a touchdown and does the UC thing in front of the camera, that's pretty damn cool.
Down the drive, yeah.
That's pretty darn cool.
On the podcast, anytime it's on YouTube, he's almost always, Travis especially, is almost always repping some type of Cincinnati gear in some way, shape, or form. So
they've been a plus for they have been a plus for UC football, no doubt about that.
I agree. So that's going on.
House, and I know I kind of wish that they would have Derek Wolf and Zach Calaro from the old house that those four lived in.
Maybe.
And bring their rings, all those rings they have. That's just that is amazing that happened right there in Clifton.
Oh man, 2nd and 3rd, no outs, 3 straight Ks to end the game.
Ouch.
Thanks for the update, Chad.
Ouch and ouch.
that means it was I guess.
Oh God. And Candelario was one of them taking the 3rd strike. That dude's got to be button gear.
Benson, CES, and Candelario, 3 straight strikeouts. But yeah, so that's going on Thursday. I agree. It'd be fun if those were some of the special guests that they had come in. I don't know that you can necessarily put them. I don't know if you can do that with Derek Wolf and Caleros or not, as billboard at them as special guest. I guess.
I think for UC people you can.
For UC people you can, but when you're comparing them with Joe Burrow, I don't know if it's
right
quite the same level. So I'm curious to see what they end up doing with the other 2 guest spots. But I'm with you. I think that would be fun to have Caleros and Derek Wolf up there. But then Saturday,
yes,
the spring game is upon us at Nippert Stadium. Hopefully it's good weather. I haven't even checked yet.
It looked like it was the last I checked.
Yeah,
Thursday might be a little weird. That's kind of dicey. For the Kelsey brothers, I hope that stays clear when they're doing their thing. But yeah, Saturday looked good. I thought
69 and sunny. Yep.
Yeah.
So
I will be back for that. I should be back. If I'm not back Friday night, I'll make sure I'm back by noon Saturday to see that.
Sounds good. I hope to see you down there then.
Yeah. I'll look you up.
In any case, noon on Saturday, spring game. You've been watching these for years at this point, George.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you looking for in particular this year?
There's a lot to look for, I think. I mean, you start with the quarterback, right? I want to see this kid. I want to see him in person. I want to see what handle he has on this offense, and it sounds like it's going very well. You point to a position, the offensive line's back, but pretty much everything else, you're going to have new tight ends running around. You're going to have wide receivers running around, running backs running. It's going to be fun to watch. And then, the same thing on the defensive side of the ball, completely new defense.
Yep.
A new base defense, a whole new defensive backfield, new linebackers being worked in. Who doesn't want to see Drogosh and what he does as a linebacker? Seems like he's kind of got a nose for the ball already. It's just going to be interesting. I don't know how many reps he'll get out there, but golly, I mean, last year I looked forward to it because it's a new coaching staff and stuff, and a new quarterback then and thing. But this one, man, this one has a lot to look forward to.
I'm with you. Is there? I guess if you had to pick one specific group from each side of the ball that you're keying in on as you watch.
It'll be, outside the quarterback. It'll be DBs and wide receivers. It will. But yeah, the whole thing and how this defense will work. And, we've seen this before, but you just want to see some competent defensive back play out there, right? Because we didn't see a whole lot of that last year. and that's not more. I mean, that's a necessity, and if you don't have it, you see what the result is in the Big 12. They'll chew you up alive, and that's what happened to the Bearcats last season. So, yes, I'm excited about the wide receivers. If I had to pin down the one position group, it's those DBs.
I'm with you.
That was such an Achilles heel last year. I mean, it really was, and there was nothing they could do. There was no help anywhere. Like, it's like, yeah, you want to replace this guy, but with who? You know?
Yeah.
So hopefully they have more answers this year.
I completely agree. And those are definitely some spots that I plan on keeping an eye on.
And I can't wait. I want to see Joe Royer do well too. I just feel like, he was hampered at Ohio State with injuries, and I think he's got a ton of talent. I'm interested to see him get out there and mix it up a little bit too, and I hope it goes well for him. Although maybe that's, you don't know what to do in these games. You just want to see both sides competent and play well and make some good, clean, hard hits. Because if one side dominates, then you're like, well, that must mean, the defense sucks or the offense sucks. And you don't want that on your team. You want a good, tightly played game, and just, hope that it's a good learning experience for every one of those kids that they carry over in the fall camp.
Agreed. As far as the defense goes, what do you think that you can really see in regards to, I guess you don't really expect that Tyson Veit to be giving out too much of his defense in the spring game.
No, and in fact, really in these things, what you want to see is the fundamentals are sound, and that's boring as shit. But see, it is. But what you want to see is sure tacklers.
Yeah.
Right on defense, you want to see the first guy make the hit and get the guy on the ground, and that was an issue last year. That was an issue, and quite honestly, it was somewhat of an issue. I believe it was the year before. When I remember that Tulane game, which was Luke's last game here, and I mean, golly, that season it just seemed like, the year UC did really, really well. The 2 years. And when they made the college football playoff, they had one of the best tackling teams I've seen. I mean, these guys, it was the first guy got the dude down. And if he didn't, the guy didn't get very far before the second guy did. They had good, sure tacklers. And that's what I'll be, you'll see some of the scheme and that stuff. And it'll be interesting to see who lines up, allegedly first team and all that. But just make the tackles and have the fundamentals sound. And guys, when the ball's thrown to you and you're halfway open, make the catch.
I'm actually really curious to see who ends up lining up for the punt return, kick return, where I feel like that was a huge issue last season, as it didn't seem like anybody who was returning kicks was able to do it at a successful clip.
Cost him a game at BYU, didn't it?
Yep.
I remember right. Yeah. That was a problem. And you're right. That's something that's got to be fixed this year. And I think the coaching staff obviously knew that and went out and made some efforts to bring in guys both at the high school level and through the portal to try to fix that. And hopefully they were able to accomplish that because, good special teams are a total blessing and can win you some games. And a lot of times that aspect is overlooked by fans, but any decent coaching staff, it's not overlooked.
Well, it sounds like it should be a gorgeous day to take in a football game. Obviously, the biggest thing is for this team to make it out unscathed by any type of injury.
Yes, and you know what? I talked about Sorsby. We'll see some Lichtenberg, but I want to see the young guy too, the new quarterback.
Samaj?
Yep. I want to see what he's all about. And it's, I just hope he shows the quarterback skills where you're like, yep, this kid could be the dude in the future. And not be a guy that's going to have to make a position change. Although I will admit, when I saw Drogosh in camp last year, he was pretty darn impressive. And I talked about this last week, but it's impressive that he's embracing this move too. When you're telling a kid, Prater did the same thing. That was the guy and was the quarterback and came here hoping and expecting to be the quarterback, but that the coaches are able to get them on the same page with this move and embrace it. Says a lot about how UC's coaching staff approached it and about how good the kids are to embrace it and maybe, and it's sold to them. I'm sure this is how you're going to get to the league. You're not doing it at that position. This position, you may have a chance. And we've seen that work out before.
Yeah. I'm with you as far as the quarterback play goes. I think it'll be interesting too. I know Chad's pointed out that a lot of times the quarterbacks will line up with not necessarily the starting quarterback.
Right.
We all assume is going to be Sorsby. He's not necessarily lining up with 1-1-1. They're just kind of sending groups of guys out there. So I think it'll be interesting to see who lines up with who and who has chemistry with what different quarterbacks.
Yeah,
they've been doing things that way.
You want to do that. You want to do that for that reason and give those other kids a solid shot at being able to make some plays with the number one guy in there.
So essentially, it's like a pod system where each position group has their own pods, and these guys, these wide receivers all go in this rotation. The running backs go in this rotation. It's a little bit more on defense than it is on offense. But I guess it's an attempt to get as many guys on the field and on tape as they work on a new defense and implement a new defense and so many new players that we really haven't seen like a ones and twos.
Well, that's a smart way to approach it, though. I mean,
yeah,
you don't have to make those. You don't have to make those decisions now.
Right. If it was going on at higher ground, I might be a little concerned that they're still trying to figure things out. But in a year with a new defensive coordinator, an entirely new, philosophy, and a bunch of new players, it makes a lot of sense defensively to do what they're doing. The wide receiver stuff, Aaron, more than anything, they have a bunch of guys, they just rotate them through with the quarterback. So there's no like you're generally going to have the first offensive line is together, the second offensive line is together, and everything else just kind of fits around that. But specifically on defense is where we have, I have an idea of like which pod of safeties is the group of ones. And I have a good idea of which pod of linebackers is the group of ones. But very rarely do you see like all three levels on the field together simultaneously.
Right.
It's interesting. I've never seen it done this way before.
Yeah, that is different. But I think it's smart. I really do. I think it's going to give those coaches a better sense of where they're at and where each individual player is at. And, quite honestly, it probably even helps the kids to do that and expose them to a little different stuff.
I agree. So plenty of stuff to keep your eye on as you head down to Nippert Stadium on Saturday at noon. I'm excited just to see the guys in full pads and getting to see some good old Bearcats football.
Baseball season, but I love football too. So it'll be a nice little change of pace and a nice little injection of football after missing it for a couple of months.
You are correct.
You going to hang out with us down on the field?
Depends. I'm not sure who I'm going with yet.
He checks to see if she's listening.
It could depend on that. So that may be a game day decision. We'll see.
All right.
If you guys are going to be down there, will they let me down there?
I'll get you taken care of if we need to.
Okay, cool.
You're royalty in this town.
And I don't know. And my negative buddy may be going too, and I would probably rather be on the field than have to hear how this team sucks already. And it's
no negative Phil. We don't want to hear anything from negative Phil.
Oh my God! Yeah.
What's his member name on the board? I got a couple guesses.
Oh no, I don't know if he's on the board.
Don't tell him about it.
Okay. You got enough of that crap to monitor. Oh my God.
I do.
I feel bad for you. You got to get a handle on that portal thread, man.
I wish I could.
Oh my God. Oh God, that's funny. That
Well, switching
has taken a life of its own.
It usually does. Switching gears to one last Bearcats topic. You have some announcements over the course of the last week where we knew that Vic and Jamil were gone last we spoke.
Yep.
But we know that Josh Reed has announced he is coming back. CMOS has announced he is coming back. Day has announced he is coming back. And Aziz Bandago said he is going to test the NBA draft, but barring some type of draft status, he will be returning as well. So that's what we know right now.
And then Dan Skilling said on the baseball game he was coming back, but I don't know that anything like official has been said. But he kind of, said that. But is it?
I don't feel like anything's etched in stone until they have until the window is closed and they're showing up for practice.
I agree with you. It's nuts, and I've gone on and on about how nutty it is. In fact, I think it's, obviously it's so nutty. I think it's chased some really, really good longtime coaches out of the college game.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Nick Saban and Jay Wright, I think both saw, I don't want to play this game.
Yeah, Coach K as well. I 1000% agree, and I don't think that Izzo is very far behind in regards to all of this.
Yeah.
It's gotten away from a lot of coaches who were set in their ways.
Yep, exactly.
But
it's got to be a headache.
We'll continue speaking about the team as if everybody is coming back, because who is not leaving, because we don't know how else to speak about them here. But if everybody is returning who is currently not Vic or Jamil, and then you, of course, have the Tylers coming in, you have Rayvon coming off his red shirt, where do you feel like this team still has holes?
Well, you need somebody scoring inside. I am sorry, and I know that's not the be-all, end-all, as we saw last night in the NCAA championship game. You can have a guy inside score 37 points and still lose. But I think they need help there. I mean, obviously, we know what Aziz does, but throwing the ball down to him and getting a bucket, unless it's a lob and he's open, it doesn't happen. They need that aspect. You got to have someone you can rely on in that. It's not the old game where you have the aircraft carrier in there and that's your bread and butter, but you still need it. They didn't have that this year, and I think it hurt them in some of those close games. So I think they need that. And then they got to figure out that, the whole deadly shooter guy from the outside, and it is, do you throw all the eggs in CJ Frederick's basket, or do you go out and get someone? It looks like they're trying to go out and get someone, and they need someone like that. They need a reliable outside shooter that doesn't necessarily play 30 minutes a night, but comes in and can change the game a little bit and change the defense a little bit. And I hope they're able to get that guy. I was hoping that guy was CJ last year, and I still think it could have been, but you just got to worry about that health. We talked about the baseball side of it and TJ Antone and his history, and it's like, I would never wish injuries on anyone, and I hope CJ's healthy as all get out. But would you be surprised if he had an injury issue last year? I don't think anyone would. And that's just the truth of the matter. So you got to get somebody else out there that can help in that role. And I don't think, Josh Reed's coming back, but I don't think that's him, even though he might launch a 3 sometime. But I just down the stretch of the season and in tournament play, it just didn't work out for him.
Yeah, he certainly had his struggles through the season. Along with Aziz, you hope can certainly make some pretty big strides offensively in this offseason.
Yeah, because defensively, he is a plus, and he seems to always be in the right spot defensively for the most part, and actually is a good rebounder. I mean, he goes in there and mixes it up, and it's just, the offensive end just seemed a little wonky for him and a little awkward. And I really thought he would take a little more of a leap as a shooter this past season. I didn't see it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. If he's coming back, I hope that those workouts are coming very soon. Dan did say in that interview that he was going to be coming back for at least one last year. He made it sound as if this is the end. Did you have any thoughts in the way that he kind of stated that?
Yeah, I'm coming. That was the plan all along. 3 years and then go to the league. I hope he's right. I really hope he's right, because if he takes another big step, and he took a decent step this year.
It was a big step.
Yeah. He was impressive, and his growth. What do they say? He didn't start playing until he was like a freshman or something. And I mean, that's amazing, because he's got a pretty good first step with the ball and blew by some guys for dunks. He can heat up outside. He's got some good aspects to his game, and seems like a good kid that works hard. And he's another guy that finds rebounds and hunts them, and
he does.
Seems to be, he's if he takes another leap like that next year, and Wes, has been talking it up and saying what he sees in his future. I hope Wes is right, because that would be a great thing if he was able to do that. And I wish him luck in that. I'm not as convinced as he sounded in that interview, but I love the confidence, and I love the goal, and I have every reason to believe, because he said he was already back in the strength training, and then I believe he said beginning of this week he'd be back in the gym, starting basketball stuff, and that's what you got to do, and it sounds like he's embraced it.
I agree. So hopefully next week we maybe have some news as to who's going to be filling some of these spots, and we'll kind of go from there.
And I will say this: I appreciate how this staff, last year they were kind of sneaky in the portal, and it's like, God, are they going to get anyone? And who's going to? They're very patient and shrewd in how they do this. There's no panic at all, and it was funny, one of those news conferences Wes had near the end of the season when someone was like, "Well, what about the portal? It opens tomorrow," and he basically laughed and was like, that portal's going to be open and closed and open again. And there's going to be how many thousands of 1,000 plus players in this thing. If I'm going to lay awake at night and devote all my time worrying about who's going to be in the portal, I'm not getting anything else done. And I can appreciate that. That's how he should look at it. And I think if a guy pops, and this is a weird thing about basketball and football too, in this portal, is you got to operate like a professional team now. And if a guy hits the waiver wire, you got to have the people around that know, hey, this guy fits what we do. And this would be a really good fit for us, not just on the court, but off the court, all that stuff. You got to know all these guys now, because when their name hits, and it seems like the way they operate, they've got a lot of that under control, and I appreciate the heck out of
I agree. We are wrapping up our hour here, though. FC Cincinnati has a draw this week.
that. Flew by, Aaron.
It did. Who's the soccer club have next week?
They're going to Montreal Saturday night. They're now technically they're in 5th place, but they're like tied with 4 or 5 teams, 2 points behind the Red Bulls. Now they lost to the Red. That loss kind of stunk, and the coach said that's by far their worst performance of the year. It was their first loss.
They got to score. They can't score.
They got to score. Bingo. They've got 7 goals in 7 matches now or something. They've got to find a way to score. They got the defense figured out, although they're missing Celentano, the goalkeeper, the number 1 goalkeeper, and they brought in the Loro guy and you can't blame it on him. He got peppered a little bit with shots and saved a penalty shot, but their defense is fine. They gave up 2. They did not play well in that match. But you're right. They got to find some offensive firepower and get that going. They can't rely on shutting teams out and having clean sheets every match. They've got to get some offense generated. And you can't just snap your fingers and do it, but I'm sure Pat Noonan's working on it.
Well, we'll find out what happens on Saturday, I suppose. Anything else local high schools that you got for this week?
No, the Skyline Showdown things are going off. In fact, they've got a big event. I think it is Saturday out at the Reds Academy. They're the youth academy. They're in Roselawn. They've got Cincinnati Public School games going on all day Saturday. So it looks like Saturday's going to be a nice day. So if after the spring game you have a thirst for more, you can go up there and catch some high school games. But the only other thing, two weeks plus before that big NFL draft, which has become one of the biggest events on the calendar, which when I was younger, I was a big draft guy. Like Jerry Jones put out this thing called the Drugstore List, and it was one.
I remember that.
Yes, that was one of the first draft guides in the country. Like just this little booklet. Like, there wasn't all this internet stuff and all that. And you get that drugstore list, and it had all these prospects and 40 times and things. And, the Bengals would draft someone, you could look it up real quick. And, but yeah, that thing is, and I'm not as crazy about the draft as I used to be, because there's just, and I think free agency has, kind of changed it a little bit.
Sure.
But still, when you're drafting high, hell yeah, I'm wanting to know, and I'm looking at everything. But man, the Bengals, I still believe offensive tackle, but there's a lot of defensive line talk now. And then again, we talked about it last week. I mean, my God, if Brock Bowers is sitting there, do you? What do you do?
I don't love it personally. I'd much rather protect Joe Burrow at all costs and keep signing the veteran road warriors.
I agree. I do agree, but man, if that kid turns out, I don't know. It's you gotta really, really believe that's what you need to do, and that is what they need to do to pass on a guy like that. But I think they've got weapons on offense.
I'd almost rather they traded out if Brock Bowers was there.
Yeah, but it's funny how this stuff works because 6 months ago, that guy was a top 10 pick, no doubt about it. It's like, my God, how high will he go? And now he's falling right on down
because
like
tackles on both sides are that important, George.
They are. And I'll tell you what, I'm with you because, look, in the 90s, and the Bengals always drafted the shiny object for the most part, not all the time. They were, but they would draft Peter Warwick or this guy, Kajana Carter. They went for these shiny objects, and did not pay attention to that offensive line. And it doesn't matter how many shiny objects you can have all the Ferraris in the world. If you don't have tanks, you ain't getting nothing done. So get the tank.
We've seen plenty of Joe Burrow injuries to know that you have to put the best line in front of him at this point for the rest of his career that you can possibly put in front of him.
But, they might take a defensive tackle too. Who knows? And I'm sure they're I would love to, like, 1 year be able to sit in, like, just from like April 1st to the draft on their meetings and see how that board changes and what thoughts are going. You know what I mean? Because they drill down. They drill down to everything.
How many late nights and fists slamming on tables?
Oh my God! I mean, you're talking about everything. Character of these guys, how they fit what you do. There's a million things that they have to think about, and then rank these dudes that they think they're going to have a shot at. And then hell, you rank every dude because you never know who's going to slide because of some crazy reason.
As long as before camp you have a legit competition for Cordell Volson, we're good.
Yeah, well, there's some guys that might play tackle or might play guard that are going to be, because lucky for the Bengals, it's flush with offensive linemen at the top.
As long as there is somebody in camp.
Yeah, you know what? And I agree with you because I think there needs to be competition there.
Actual competition for Cordell Volson. There has to be.
Right. I agree.
We'll get into it a little bit deeper next week as we will be a week closer to that ever-looming draft. But we are at 106, and I know you're probably a little hungry at this point.
I am. We'll see. I'll see if Mrs. Vogel came up with something.
With that said, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of George in the Jungle. Be sure to check out Remington Tavern at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. We're going to have to ask you next week what that is. Check them out on Instagram at Remington
bottle cap bonanza.
Instagram at Remington Cincy, and follow them on Facebook.
I think it's legal. I better shut up.
Until Tuesday at 9. We'll see you then.
See you later.